Try now.
What's up, pair orphans and retrogrades? It's been a while since you've heard from me. I thought I was talking at you 60 seconds ago. Was I not talking at them 60 seconds ago?
I guess our audio was
shut off. I guess we haven't been doing this for a while and we've lost the knack for it. I was RVing around the whole country, almost the whole country, with the fam. And of course, you might have noticed that we were gone for about a week or a week and a half. We were gone for longer than that because sneaky, we pre-recorded a bunch of those Our Lady shows, Akita, Fatima, Lourdes, Guadalupe. I recorded live here. So that bit into the amount of time that I would be gone. And I'm really genuinely happy to be back doing Rules for Retrograde shows for you. There's some exciting guests that are going to join me later in May. Matt Frad's one of them. And there are some others that I'll announce later this week. That should be really, really top notch. Also, I am going to be kicking off the Promised side podcast with Grover from Twitter, Catholic Twitter, if you know him. We're going to be doing a kind of in the world, but not of the world Catholic podcast that'll be not so Catholic. It'll be informed by our Catholic worldview. We're going to be talking about anything besides Catholicism. It'll be two very Catholic dudes talking about the world in a more conversational format, less formal than guests when I bring them on, and never about Catholicism specifically. So it'll be a more lighthearted approach to the world from a Catholic approach, informed by Catholicism, but whatever, two dudes.
But this show is staying the same.
Yeah, Rules for Retrogrades. I'll be here for the summer. I'm finished with doctoral classes for the year, so I could do 3, maybe even 4 Rules for Retrogrades shows on hardcore Catholicism for the whole summer, and I'm looking forward to getting back to it. Now, the subject matter for today is, I guess, heavy. It threatens to be heavy, but we don't really know exactly what the implications are. For a few months now, there's been the threat, the kind of whisper of a threat, not even a full-throated threat, that the Latin Mass, which were all but guaranteed through the motu proprio by Pope Benedict from 2007, Summorum Pontificum, may be removed. That whatever niceties were added in 2007 via Summorum Pontificum by Pope Benedict XVI may be removed. What I have to ask are 2 main things. One, is this true, or is it just the rumor mill, the paper rumor mill? Oh, the papal rumor mill under Pope Francis has been more busy than any other papal rumor mill that I know or remember, or that I've even heard about. So one, is there veracity to it? And what would be the case? What would be the implication? What would be the impetus for it if it weren't real? If this is one of the many unrealized, unfulfilled rumors of the Francis pontificate, why has it been circulated a couple times with renewed vigor early this week? I have a theory on that, what Francis would allow that for. Secondly, and more importantly, what actually did Summorum Pontificum do? Because the Latin Mass was never abrogated. The church has been really clear on this. It's repeated all the time by Vatican II alum, by perennials of the JP2 church, by Ratzinger himself. I mean, Ratzinger, as Pope Benedict XVI, says it in the opening lines of Summorum Pontificum in the text. De dicto, it says, well, the Latin Mass, the TLM version, has never been abrogated. So what exactly does, or could possibly, a motu proprio do that ostensibly is reintroducing the Latin Mass, but in its opening lines, in its opening salvo, it says, the Latin Mass has never been gone. That's strange. That also involves, I think, rhetorical analysis, which would be helpful. But this time, I'll start by saying Pope Francis has said it to the Italian bishops, meaning it's closer to home, closer to the Vatican. I forget where the rumor crept up about a month and a half ago that maybe the motu proprio will be released, will be nullified. Now it's closer to the Vatican. So generally speaking, Vaticanistas say if the whisperings involve the Italian bishops there at home near the see itself, Rome, then there's a little more validity to them. I don't think I said anything. I was getting a lot of questions in emails and DMs and texts by fans of the show who were asking me, would you comment, please, on the fact that Summorum Pontificum seems to be in jeopardy? And my answer back then was, people have been saying this since before Pope Benedict XVI left the papacy. Well, what if this is removed? There are parties with agendas on all sides of the church that look forward to or squint toward a day when it would be removed, because left, right, whatever, it forwards the agenda. So I guess this brings me to my treatment now that we're this much further down the line, and the rumor has been repeated. It's repeated closer to home there in Italy, and there seems to be a bit more teeth to it. I would say this: we never know, under the pontificate of Pope Francis, God of surprises Francis, who he got this expression, the God of surprises, from Cardinal Martini, the alum, the Don, in fact, of the St. Gallen Mafia, who was like spiritual father to Pope Francis before he was Pope. The God of surprises, which if this isn't ringing bells for you, what the God of surprises is, I'm going through the St. Gallen Mafia book by Giulia Maloney. It's dynamite. I'm really excited for the thing to be released, and I'm writing the foreword for it currently. The God of surprises is essentially the Trojan horse used by St. Gallen Mafia, leftists within the church that want to erode any objective morality, particularly around sexual issues, or what Bishop Baird calls the pelvic issues, which is a rather gay way to refer to it. It's a way of saying, hey, look, God can do whatever he wants. He actually can't contradict himself. That's the one thing we know he can't do. And therefore, he might contradict himself on sexual ethics. Maybe he'll say it's okay to get a divorce, or to be a gay dude, or to whatever, commit adultery, whatever they're implying. These lefties in the church, like Pope Francis and his cronies, with this phrase, the God of surprises, all it really means is God might surprise us by doing something that looks alarmingly like something on the leftist cultural social agenda. Just make it not only not illicit, but not even culturally frowned upon to, be a gay dude, whatever, be a tranny, be a bestialist. Eventually, probably they want pedophilia. Okay, I don't know. The sky's the limit if Pope Francis and his spiritual Sherpa, Cardinal Martini, who ran the St. Gallen Mafia, if they were right, and God can surprise us and contradict himself, which he can't, if they were right about that, then you'd never know anything. We could have an utterly voluntarist God like the Islamic one, who contradicts himself at will, who could order something evil like the rape or the murder of innocents. This is where they're going. This is what this is what informs the reasoning of Pope Francis. So, the God of surprises from this Francis pontificate is rhetoric that would ostensibly allow the divorced and civilly remarried to receive communion, meaning it's really not wrong to be divorced and civilly remarried, but which is already a fait accompli, right? He's done this. He's now magisterialized it in lower magisterium through, as you know, 2016's Amoris Laetitia, and then that was stuck into the AAS via the Argentine bishops, who said, here's our version of what we read in Amoris Laetitia, Pope Francis, is it okay? And he said yes. And they stuck it in the AAS. So that's the God of surprises at work, according to one Pope Francis. Now, the God of surprises might remove the Latin Mass. Or he might not under Francis' pontificate. There's evidence kind of on either side that Francis definitely wants to mess with the tradition-loving youth. In 2015, he made the comment that you have to dig into the psychology of these traditionalist youth that want tradition. Dig. There's always some psychological trouble. That's not a direct quote. He said dig, but he said there's some psychological etiology causing youth to love tradition and not to love, I don't know, Cardinal Tagle dancing to discoteca music or whatever these old boomers, these clueless dinosaurs like Pope Francis think youth ought to want. Whatever, like the boomers circumscribed narrowly into what the youth taste is. It's always smacks of, 1968 or 1971 or something like that. It's always ugly. It's always disproportionately subversive at all. It's always disproportionately radically subversive. It's always aligned with leftist social causes. It always involves the arts in like a really tacky way, right? That's what the youth are supposed to want. These cronies of the sexual revolution, like Pope Francis and his goon squad friends, the Sankt Gallen Mafia. But it's all done, mind you, under the diktat of, the notion that we shouldn't tell the youth what they ought to want at all. But they're telling the youth, if you like tradition, there's something wrong with you. And Pope Francis said this in 2015. Dig. Might have been 2016. It was either late 2015 or early 2016. Dig. Traditionalist youth are especially weird, is what he's saying. And he can't really give us the template because with the God of Surprise, you never know what the objective standard or template ought to be for what anyone ought to do, much less youth. Okay, so on the one hand, Pope Francis seems a bit like he has a hostility towards tradition. He's a man of the left. He is the Sankt Gallen Pope. He is quite a radical leftist, not just a man of the left. So it would make sense to our configuration of the world, our decently rational configuration of the world, that he hates the Latin Mass and he hates the people that go to the Latin Mass. And those are two different things, right? People who go to the Latin Mass can sometimes be irritating, but the Latin Mass is beautiful and most of my friends love it and I love it. So that makes sense. It would be sensible for Pope Francis to be against it. Our categories would make sense if he was. But then other times he seems surprisingly neutral or even sort of tepidly friendly to it. If you take him at his word, right? If you take Cardinal Mueller, who until 2.5 years ago was his CDF, 3.5 years ago, sorry. It's shaking off the dust here from being in the RV for 3 weeks. 3.5 years ago, he switched over to Cardinal Ladaria, but it was Cardinal Mueller before, who's a conservative CDF. The CDF of Benedict XVI had been kept around a surprisingly lengthy while. And Mueller was tasked, I guess, by Francis with meeting with the leader of the Society of St. Pius X. And that seemed friendly. That seemed less hostile to tradition than our categories would arrange it, than I would draw it up. So what could be the purpose? He's either neutral and a little bit friendly or totally unfriendly, even though he's a man of the left. So it should be the latter. Why would it be any of the former? So in this first half of the show, I would posit Francis is a great tactician. Don't be fooled. It's easy to forget how good a tactician he is. If you don't read about Francis, then you probably don't know it. Read Henry Seyer's book, The Dictator Pope, great tactician. Look at the way that he released Amoris Laetitia, that he indulged the Casper proposal. Look at the way he did it. It was genius. It was a genius exercise in incrementalism. And this is what reading Julian Maloney's book on the Sankt Gallen Mafia, he just comes through loud and clear. It comes through so clear. He's known by all his friends as a great chess player, a great incrementalist. In 2014, we had the Extraordinary Family on the Synod in October, and the midterm relatio was released, and it had stuff that was affirming gay unions and gay relationships. And Pope Francis let that come out, let a bunch of stuff that would insinuate that he favors the 30-year-old plan for Kaspar's proposal to give communion to the divorced and civilly remarried out. And it was voted down, but he quietly kept those provisions in. And I remember all this because I was watching it very closely at the time. He kind of just shunted to the side all the weird affirmations in the midterm relatio from 2014. He got that out for the final version. 2014's Extraordinary Synod closed up shop. Then for 2015, which opened a year later in October of 2015, all the rules of the Synod had changed. They no longer were publishing their relatio midterm, so we wouldn't know what they were doing. The centrist and the right-wing bishops complained that the rules were being changed day to day, and they all noted this seems to be a reaction to what happened last year. It was all made public, and the African bishops, particularly Cardinal Sarah, prevailed or seemed to prevail against the Kaspar proposal. Strange. And remember, in late 2014, Francis had quietly kept alive the Kaspar proposal, even though it had been voted down. He's the Pope. He can do that. But then, and right before 2015 Synod, by the way, there was a perfectly planned political stunt of Cardinal Kaspar appearing on Raymond Arroyo's World Over. And what he said there was, my plan has failed. It failed under JP2. It failed under Ratzinger. It's failed now under Francis. He considered it, and he's rejected it. That was just months before the October 2015 Synod. Well, he was lying. It was a great political ploy. That Synod closed. 5.5 months later, Amoris Laetitia is released in April of 2016. And through this sleight of hand, through the famous footnote heard around the world, he see the increment changing from 2014 to 2015, now 2016. No one knew what the hell that meant, that footnote. I mean, if you're smart, you did. I was writing on it back then. But then he waited yet another 6 months to admit to the Argentine bishops in late 2016, yes, obviously it meant the Kaspar proposal all along. But doing this stuff is one of Gandalf's tricks, right? To introduce all the many dwarves to Beorn. Or is it Tom Bombadil? No, it's Beorn. Who's grumpy. And he doesn't want like 14 guests at his house at once. He just introduces them 2 by 2. This stuff works because the people that would hold the line, the conservatives and the defenders of orthodoxy, are so dumb. I mean, we're so dumb, and we're so complacent and fat and insipid and lazy that this stuff just works on us. So the Francis agenda has proceeded apace, and it works. And so what? Okay, and then the weaponized ambiguity that he used by releasing like the key fact in the bombshell third act of the play, he stuck in a footnote. And he did it again in the post-synodal exhortation after the Amazon Synod called Querida Amazonia. And he did it, except there it wasn't a footnote, it was an attachment. He attached the relatio to the document, and the relatio basically was saying women can be deacons. So he's exquisitely good at the weaponized ambiguity, much more than anything having to do with Vatican II, where there is some weaponized ambiguity. Francis is the master of it. He's made this art into a science. So why the games in 2016 between CDF Mueller and the leader of the SSPX? Why would he do that? I mean, the superior general. Well, because he wanted, on the one hand, to have the part of the SSPX alum who would actually celebrate the regularization of the SSPX order. He wanted to give them hope. But a lot of SSPX types don't actually want that or seek it. That's a whole other show. So he wanted to look like maybe we're considering regularizing the order SSPX and giving them a personal prelature, which only I think Opus Dei has of all the religious orders. But on the other hand, he's dissing them by saying young people who like the Latin Mass are weirdos or whatever. And then at the same time, now he's floating multiple rumors about doing away, forget regularizing SSPX. Now that has nothing really to do with the Latin Mass, right? It's a whole different question. It's a related universe of listeners will be concerned about both issues probably. But the Latin Mass is different. Now he's going even further. From a typical SSPXer's perspective, I guess they'd be psyched if they got personal prelature and were made, given a canonical status again. A lot of them I don't think would like it because they like to be the rogues, but a lot of them would also be excited, obviously. But now to say, well, not only are we not doing that went nowhere, as people at the time said it would. And you should have listened. People were saying this is going nowhere. But now, not only do they not get the personal prelature for SSPX, but now we're going to go one further and take away, or whatever, this is why we have to get to the next half of this show, whatever it is to nullify Summorum Pontificum, we're going to do that. That's even worse than not getting personal prelature for SSPX. Someone like me, I don't care. I don't have a dog in the hunt. I don't go to SSPX chapels, never wanted to, never will, right? So it doesn't concern me. But most people that go to Latin Mass are more interested in the issue than I am. And so, I mean, it seems like a double hand slap to get that kind of falling on its face in 2017, slowing to a boring, sort of underwhelming close, ceasing altogether in 2017. And then 4 years later, Francis lets flirt with the idea that this is real. Sometime in late 2021, he takes away Summorum Pontificum. Well, he's a master of what I think he's doing is what I think he was trying to do. This is purely theory, pure conjecture. Okay? So don't clip that part out if you're going to make a video clip of me and whatever. It's pure conjecture. I don't want to get into the vegano problem of making false prophecy. When I'm pretty sure of something, I tell you. And guess what? When I'm pretty sure of something and I say it publicly, it happens. I got a good record. This is pure conjecture. I don't want to be stuck to this. I think what Francis was doing was drawing as many people into the SSPX, as many Latin Massers as he could into the SSPX. Because I don't have a dog in the hunt. I got lots of friends that go to the SSPX. I got no particular animus towards you, but I'm a Cardinal Burke man. That's trouble to draw them out of the church and into the SSPX, especially if then you're going to get rid of the Latin Mass, right? So it's kind of like drawing all of the hostiles into one church or sanctuary, and then you just bomb it all. So I don't think he really cares what happens to them as long as you don't regularize the SSPX's status, which he didn't. That fell on its face. He drew more people to it, and certain other shows were like Taylor Marshall's show were kind of instrumental, I think, in helping to normalize that situation. Not necessarily that it should have been normalized in the popular view, the sort of unknowing Catholic view. And so after that, now he bombs the Latin Mass at the diocesan level. I'm just playing with numbers here. I'm just playing with theories. And then, then you're going to maybe, after it's been normalized falsely or speciously, then you're going to get rid of the Latin Mass. So you're just going to drive all of the Latin lovers, all of the tradition lovers out of the diocesan parish, out of the church life. And then you see a bunch of people that just take their ball and go to SSPX, and that's a whole quagmire defining it. But they're definitely not, they call it, it's the Novus Ordo Church, right? Or many of them call it the Novus Ordo sect. So I think that's what he's doing. I think the old master of weaponized ambiguity has played upon not just SSPX, but SSPX adjacents, kind of like Taylor Marshall. Masterfully, I think he played them. And if he removes Summorum Pontificum, once he saw that there are all these SSPX adjacents in the United States, oh, look what I can do to the presence in the mainstream church, which is really what matters. Having guys like, they don't have to be guys like me. It's not an ego thing, but guys that talk about the need for Latin, or at least the need for getting altars, not tables, and, facing liturgical east, and bringing altar rails back into church, and getting the choirs the F out, right? Getting the hymns out, bringing the chants back in, bringing as much Latin as we can, and at least the Eucharistic stuff, just returning wholesale to the Latin Mass, and doing so, if we have to, incrementally, but aggressively incrementally. That's what I represent, right? So when you get the SSPX adjacent crowd, like Taylor Marshall and that's a whole different thing, right? That does no evangelizing. That brings none of the good sort of normies, good yet totally ignorant normies at your average Novus Ordo church. That does nothing for them. A lot of them don't even know what a TLM is. You talk to a lot of Protestants, particularly here in the South, they don't even know the term they don't know they are Protestant. They're like, oh, I'm Christian, bro. They're like, no, you're a Protestant Christian. And you have to explain to them what they are. A lot of people who attend the Novus Ordo Mass are just like, well, I'm Catholic, which is not as dumb as what the Protestants say, because it is just true. We are just Catholic. But they don't know there is a Novus Ordo. They don't know that there was a Latin Mass that was never dispensed. This is what we need to talk about in a second, that they ought to really be going to, because it's,
we gotta love them and bring them in.
Right.
That's the main thing. We gotta love the Novus Ordo people enough to bring them into the tradition and the richness of the faith.
And gotta love the TLM enough to not just have our own little remnants and be like, we're the best. They're normies. We gotta love the normies enough to bring them to the TLM, and we gotta love the TLM enough to hang out with the normies some and to spread the culture. That's not what you might love SSPX. You might hate it. You might be neutral and just sort of wary of it, more like me. I'm not even talking any of that. I'm just saying that's not what they do. The SSPX ostensibly wants to be a remnant kind of church, which is why this is a big image with those types. They want to be a remnant and just say, firebomb the Novus Ordo sect. And they really do talk about the Novus Ordo like it's a different church. All you have to do is go on their website. That's not me. I want the Latin Mass back. And therefore, I'm good at it. I know how to make something that a lot of people don't know about today popular tomorrow. It's what I do. And I know how to do it the right way too, not the cheap, superficial way. You got to work incrementally. Benedict was too slow in bringing it back. I agree with SSPX types about that. But my project's totally different, right? I want to re-Latinize the Latin church. SSPX people don't. Okay, so I think that's what Francis has done. That's what I think he's done. He's just drawn all the people over to SSPX, and it doesn't really matter what happens to them from his perspective, because for all intents and purposes, I'm not talking canonically because it's so boring and none of you study canon law anyway. I'm talking practically, which is what he cares about. That they're their own remnant of some sort of interregnum, sort of in-between Catholic sect. This is from Francis's point of view as well. And he's the left are the ones that are really good at this, not you. If you're listening to my show, you're probably a right-winger of some sort. Whether you're FSSP or SSPX, or you go to the Novus Ordo and you claim you have a reverent one. Yeah, right. Or you just go to a diocesan Latin Mass, or whoever the hell else you are listening to my show, you're probably not a leftist. So I'm not asking your opinion on this, because the left is those who's good at it. This is probably what Francis has done here. Get anyone who ever had an interest or gave half a damn about the Latin Mass as many of those people anyway, get them into SSPX chapels, and then firebomb the possibility to go to a fully Catholic TLM. Okay, that's what I think he's done. They're good at it. We're very bad at it. They win, we lose. Remember that part in Happy Gilmore where he's talking to Chubbs to bring him back? Like, you're good looking. I'm not. You win, I lose. This is the left. This is what we need to say to the left. This is what he's doing. He's masterful. When we get a guy, a conservative in office, he loses like Benedict. And then he gives up ground. He is bringing the reform of the reform far too slowly. Okay. So I think this is what's going on. I'm quite convinced of it, but it's not a public prediction. Don't ask me how that works. Okay, now what actually was accomplished by Summorum Pontificum, and the reason I ask this is because that is what it is to ask what would be accomplished by the removal of Summorum Pontificum. Before you can know what happens efficaciously by the removal of something, you have to know what the original something stood for. This is a helpful summary by Jeff Meares, who runs this little blog, Catholic Culture, very good blog. He says, following the insistent prayers of these faithful, Benedict made these 2007 provisions in the following 12 articles of Summorum Pontificum. While the Missal of Paul VI is the ordinary expression of the Lex Orandi of the Church, the Blessed John the 23rd Missal, now he's a saint, right, is to be considered as an extraordinary expression of the same Lex Orandi, because it is just much more extraordinary, and must be given due honor for its venerable and ancient usage. Therefore, it is permissible to use the 1962 missal, which was in fact, quote unquote, never abrogated, right there in the first item, as an extraordinary form of the liturgy of the church under the following conditions. Now he's going to go on to number 2. What does it mean for something never to have been abrogated, but he has to give permission to use it again? Contradiction. The contradiction is the mark of life in the church after Vatican II, because the left is running the show now. Condition 2, for masses celebrated without the people, each Catholic priest of the Latin Rite may use the 1962 Missal or the 70 Missal. So this is private masses, they're saying for themselves. Okay, cool. Not so relevant to us. Number 3, communities of consecrated and apostolic life may use the 62 Missal for community celebration, but if they wish to do so often, habitually, or permanently, the decision must be taken by the superiors major. They're ordinary. Okay, so that means you got to go to your bishop or your major superior if you are in the religious life. Number 4, the private masses mentioned in number 2 may also be attended by faithful who, of their own free will, ask to be admitted. So if you're cool enough to know a priest who's cool enough to do a private Latin mass for you every day of the week, or every Sunday of the year, I should say, then you don't even have to involve a bishop. That's the real good deal. Number 5, in parishes where there's a stable group of faithful who adhere to the earlier liturgical tradition, the pastor should make provision for them to celebrate Mass according to the 1962 Missal. What does a constitutional should mean? This is a big question among 10th Amendment scholars of the U.S. Constitution. What does it mean to say, well, these powers not specifically given to Congress in Article 1, Section 8 should be left to the people of the states? Well, what does that mean? Shoulds will get glossed over by the muscle. But at least Benedict says it explicitly here that the pastor should make provision for any Latin Mass wannabes in a parish to use the 62 Missal, the TLM. He goes on, such celebration may take place on working days, while on Sundays and feast days, one such celebration may also be held. So you can only have one Latin Mass per Sunday, which is kind of weird. I guess they're keeping it extraordinary rather than ordinary. And they'll always stick it at the 2 p.m. slot. So many churches I've gone to, boom, it's stuck there at the 2 p.m. Pain in the neck to get to slot. But that's fine. I wake up late anyway, right? So I don't mind that. But that's what they do. It's kind of funny. And then they address weddings and all that. That's not as important. Number 6, When the 62 Missal, the TLM, is used, the readings may be given in the vernacular. Number 7, a group of lay faithful which desires the 62 Missal but does not receive satisfaction from the pastor. So addressing this constitutional should from 2 rules up. Should inform the diocesan bishop, and the bishop is, quote, strongly requested. Don't know what that constitutional strongly requested means either. To satisfy them. If he cannot arrange for such a celebration, the matter should be referred to the Pontifical Commission Ecclesia Dei. So in other words, your priest should do it. If not, go tell on him to your bishop. If your bishop won't do it, go tell on him to Ecclesia Dei. Now, who's running Ecclesia Dei that month? You know, it's probably liberals because they run everything in the church and the world. But at least Benedict's saying, look, you can run something up the flagpole if you're getting messed with, as a Latin Mass lover who wants Latin Mass. Number 8, similarly, a bishop who wishes to satisfy such requests but is unable to do so may refer the problem to Ecclesia Dei Commission for assistance. Number 9, the pastor may also grant the use of the earlier ritual for baptism, marriage, and penance, also anointing of the sick. Number 10, the ordinary may erect a personal parish or appoint a chaplain for celebrations following the ancient form of the Roman Rite. That's kind of cool. I've never seen that. Number 11, the Pontifical Commission Ecclesia Dei continues to exercise its function. Okay, great. Number 12, the Ecclesia Dei Commission will exercise the authority of the Holy See, supervising the observance and application of these dispositions. Okay. So it's still unclear when you read the 12 provisions of Ecclesia Dei, and no one's really done this. I know there's been other coverage of this. The possibility of the Latin Mass being removed. Again, some SSPX types are looking forward to it to drive more people to their chapels. I think Francis is looking forward to it to drive more Latin Mass lovers to the chapels of SSPX. I'm not, but I also think it might just be noise. It seems less like noise when it came out with the Italian bishops this time. And I can honestly say this, my sort of lawyerly read of this is it's not clear what status the Latin Mass would be returned to if we did away with Summorum Pontificum. Why? Because it wasn't clear what status the Latin Mass had before Summorum Pontificum in 2007. If it wasn't clear what their status was from 1970 to 2006, which it definitely wasn't. Some people say some people allege they're being excommunicated for offering the Mass. There's never hard evidence of this. Or if there's hard evidence of it, there's not hard evidence that the bishop wasn't acting out of accord with the Vatican. Some other people allege they went to Latin Mass, in one continual lineage the whole time. After Vatican II, their bishop kept allowing at least one Latin Mass. To me, that's a more consistent read with Article 1 of Summorum Pontificum. But also, the first line of Summorum Pontificum seems to half contradict that, because Benedict has to say, and I quote, while the Missal of Paul VI is the ordinary expression of the Church, the Roman Missal of John the 23rd is considered to be extraordinary expression of the same lex orandi and must be given due honor. Therefore, it is permissible to use it, even though it was never abrogated. Okay? Silliness, man. That is straight up silliness that we can't even get clarity on what the status of this was for 36 years after the council. We can't get the status of what the Latin Mass was. So if he resurrects the time when the status of the Latin Mass in dioceses is unclear, then he's resurrecting that ambiguity. I'm not sure that that's the weaponized ambiguity. The weaponized ambiguity he's using is against people like me that want to go to the Latin Mass every week of the year, don't have any interest, never did, never will, in going to an SSPX chapel, just want to go to either FSSP or Institute of Christ the King, or just a straight up diocesan Latin Mass, have no interest in the Novus Ordo, and only go when we're basically forced to. and suffer through it. My demographic is the one being harangued here. And what I will begin pursuing much more aggressively is, what was the status for those 36 years between 1970 and 2006 of the Latin Mass? And I'm going, if he pushes this envelope, right? If he pushes the matter, then it's like, okay, we're going to have to look into this and do some really precise shows on this is what we turned up. The Latin Mass was or was not ever prescribed for 36 years. It's asinine that it's this unclear. Just as I said this to Michael Lofton, it's asinine that someone has to go do like a doctoral dissertation in the third Christian millennium, right? On whether or not the magisterium can err in thus and such a proclamation in an encyclical or in a whatever, an exhortation. It's asinine that this isn't more clearly constitutionally laid out procedurally. Okay, so that's the case. If it, I mean, I guess it's partly conclusive. What we've said in today's Rules for Retrogrades program is partly inconclusive. We're going to have to do some serious work if he pushes this insane dog who shouldn't be hunting, let alone whether he will. Of what does the abrogation of Summorum Pontificum mean? What it really means, that I do know, that I think ought to help clarify your position for you, is I think this means Francis wants all the Latin Masters in the SSPX, right? And that should not be a reassuring thought to you. I'm not saying that in a raw cheerleading way. I'm saying he wants them all there for a reason. And I'm pretty sure about that because he's a good tactician. If they're all there, that means you have this completely questionable status that even Francis's arch nemesis in the church, the arch conservative in the church, who was the highest Latinist in the land, says SSPX is in schism, right? A lot of people don't want to hear that. I'm not a canonist myself, so I'm just citing Cardinal Burke. But the point is, the high canonist, the high arch conservative, the leader of the conservative church, the leader of the Dubia Cardinals, used to be the Grand Inquisitor, the prefect for the Apostolic Signatura, the High Court, High Canonical Court, says, yes, they definitely are. And I, Cardinal Burke, love the Latin Mass. So it makes a lot of sense that Francis would want any of the Latin Mass adjacents to be SSPX. Most of them now are already kind of SSPX adjacent, but he wants to make them pick after letting them flirt with it for these number of years. That's, I think, what's happening. That I don't find that vague. That's the only thing that's consistent with why Francis would have flirted with being nice to the SSPX and Bishop Fillet during those years when he was Superior General of the SSPX. So that's what it is. Now there's some people making comments that there would be no Latin Mass without the SSPX. That's just historically wrong. Okay, I'm an Aristotle scholar. When Aristotle's most important texts went missing for hundreds of years, right? They pop back up under Arabic commentariat. Everyone still knew who Aristotle was. People don't forget that quickly. Our culture is illiterate, but people don't forget that quickly. So this is just a nonsense claim. It's nothing against the SSPX. That has nothing to do with my interest. This is so boring. You guys have to realize how boring you are if this is all you want to talk about. But I'm just saying, as a matter of historical fact, no matter where you are on the SSPX, they did not save the Latin Mass. If we come out one way, and I'm not sure on this other matter, if you come out one way, then Summorum Pontificum saved it. If you come out the other way, that it was allowed to be done in dioceses all along, then nothing saved it. Then it was literally just going the whole time the way I have an old guy that tells me this regularly. I went to a Latin Mass unbrokenly in between 1970 and 2006. But the point is, either way, whether or not it was kind of abrogated, but not really abrogated, but sort of abrogated until 2006. Then Summorum resuscitated it. And if it was alive the whole time, broadly speaking, then nothing resuscitated. It was alive the whole time anyway. But even if it was Summorum that resuscitated or rehabilitated popular interest in the Latin Mass, then it, you know, I mean, it was literally like 35 years. People don't forget about a 1500-year liturgy because it was gone 35 years. Aristotle's texts were literally missing for like 7 centuries. And when they were found, people were like, good, we've been looking for these. So 7 centuries, that's, you know, that's a lot longer than 35 years. And there was a contingent of people with undesignated affiliations, Catholic people, that just loved the Latin Mass and because they're not idiots, knew it was the better Mass, the superior Mass all along, and would always return to it. So that's just an absurd claim to make historically. It's an indefensible claim. That doesn't even mean you have to, it's not an anti-SSPX thing. It's just a historically absurd thing to say that all the world would have forgotten about the real liturgy of the Latin part, the Roman part of the Catholic Church, which had been around for a millennium and a half, just because it might or might not have been happening for 35 years. But at any rate, if it really hadn't been happening for those 35 years, then Pope Benedict XVI and Summorum Pontificum brought it back. But the interest and the culture for it was there the whole time. And it was there with people that didn't necessarily go to SSPX chapels. So no, I'm sorry. That's a forensically indefensible statement. I mean, literally, if we made this into a symbolic logic argument, that just doesn't work. It doesn't check out at the end. It was either there all along or it wasn't there all along, depending on, we need a little research council to back up what Francis is saying, depending on which decision he elects for here in late 2021. And then if it comes to that, I promise you, I pledge to you, parish orphans and retrogrades, I will go do the research myself. Was the Latin Mass happening between 1970 and 2006?
Lots of people tell us that they were going unbrokenly to the Latin Mass during those years.
Not at SSPX chapels.
Not at SSPX chapels.
I wouldn't say ton, but few.
We have been to many churches over the few years, and many people have come up to us and said, "Oh, well, we've been going to Latin Mass here the whole this is just dumb on my part. I straight up can never remember if me and my young wife started going to the Latin Mass with Monsignor Belwamini, who I have a great picture of Steph, Monsignor Ralph and Steph, God rest his soul, the priest that taught us Italian, taught us a little bit of Latin, and the Latin Mass priest that brought us into that. I always felt like we started going about 9 months, coincidentally, before Summorum Pontificum came out at St. Francis Church in Bakersfield, California. But it might have been the following summer just after it had come out. But I'm pretty sure that's wrong. So that would be strong evidence. There were Latin Mass, old Italian style priests here in America doing the Latin Mass the whole time, not at SSPX chapels. Either way, it has nothing to do with SSPX. Sorry. Doesn't mean you can't like it, but you have to like it for other reasons. That's not a defensible claim. Okay. So here's the takeaway. Let's wait and see what the old cad Francis does with this. Let's see which direction he takes it in. Is he using the rumor mill for his evil leftism in a way that will be unfulfilled? Or is he using his evil rumor mill toward leftist causes in a way that will be fulfilled? I don't know. Either way, it's evil leftism. God bless you. We'll see what happens. Don't worry. Keep your head on a swivel. All that. I'm happy to be back with you. And I am going to be right now recording the first version of this alternate, but if you want to listen to it, it'll be where I release all my audio podcasts. It won't be on the YouTube channel, but I'm going to be releasing it now with my friend. I'm going to be recording it, I should say, with my friend Grover, who some of you know from Twitter. He's here at my house right now. He just opened the door and he came in as on cue. It's weird. It's like
a mystical entree.
You said my name 3 times, man.
Yeah, this is him. So we'll be doing, I said it, I think, twice.
A lighthearted Catholic gentleman show.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a show for people that, because a lot of people write me and they're like, hey, you're clearly a guy with a lot of interests. When you step into your secular interests, you don't leave the Catholicism behind. Everything you do is informed by your Catholicism. And Grover, my friend here, he's the same way. The conversations we have is informed by our Catholicism, but it doesn't tend to be what we talk a lot about. Now, we attend the Latin Mass together quite often in New Orleans, right? When things are going good, about once a month at least. But that's not really what we talk about when we're behind the scenes. So this will be like we don't know what the name of it's going to be, but it's an in the world, not of the world kind of emphasis, which I think Catholics want to see a return to this. Christ directed us to be in the world, not of it. Can't borrow the sexual ethics from Pope Francis and the St. Gallen Mafia, but it's okay to be, go to your Latin Mass. Then when you go to brunch, you're talking about, boxing, or you're talking about ordinary stuff, athletics, world events, goofy jokes that people that too often you go to Latin Mass and you think that the person that you attended with is not going to laugh at your joke. Not because it's not funny, but because it's funny. That's a bad reason not to laugh at a joke. The only good reason not to laugh at a joke is because it's not funny, which is what I'm always having to do with Grover, because he's always trying unfunny jokes.
It's like a Michael Scott quote or something.
Yeah. A Michael Scott quote, meaning a Wayne Gretzky quote. So we're going to do that. We're going to record that right now, and I'll release that where do we upload our normal?
You don't know anything about the technology end of this.
I really don't.
No,
I
I
really
have
don't.
informed him where his shows are going and what time he needs to show up and record.
Yes, it'll be on Google.
On podcast.
It'll be on Apple computers. Do you know?
On the interweb. Look on the interweb.
Just get on your internet. Your grandmother will help you. She's better with the interwebs than I. Look, America's online. You're not going to stop them. America Online. AOL. You can try, but you're not going to. Yeah. Oh, one more quick plug for Real Estate for Life before we go. And by one more, I mean I'm going to do one today rather than none. I'm telling people that they need to get out of their blue states, get to red states. We want to accumulate as many red state people who have a red state philosophy in actual red states. If you call the good folks at realestateforlife.org, and again, call them by internet, which means write them in email or go on the website, then they will help you. They'll be tremendously effective and have been tremendously effective at lining up good people with good homes in good states. And again, it's consistent with the political philosophy that I'm espousing here. I like the idea of grouping together as many red staters in as many blood red states as we can do, because that's the way a republic is supposed to work. You're not supposed to be a red state type of guy living in a blue state and just sitting on all your best notions. You're supposed to be screaming them at movie theaters or whatever.
Or passerbys or strangers just going about the business.
Exactly. Yeah. So thanks for your comment, SSPX people, and thanks for your concern, Latin Mass people writ large. We'll see what Francis is going to do with this rumor mill. He's either doing something bad with it or he's doing something bad with it in a different way.
Can I also just give a quick shout out to St. James at Sagbridge parishioners? The parish was amazing. Everyone was so welcoming there. And the church really was the most beautiful we've seen in America. So thank you for the warm welcome when we went to Mass.
You guys had the dopest graveyard with the nicest graves that I've ever danced on. That was an amazing graveyard and amazing people. And it was a great talk. Well, I guess then I'm complimenting myself. Never mind. It was fun to give the talk to all of you and to walk through your graveyard, your parish graveyard, and good burger that you made for me. All right. God bless you all. Deus Volt. I'll be back with more exciting programs with a lot of guests. Hopefully we'll be doing some debate later in the month. I will announce just whom those debates will be with momentarily, next show at least. God bless you. Deus Volt.